What's up, you guys? I know it's been a long time since I've done a video like this, but the idea popped up in my head last night, so let's get into it. All right, please don't mind the fan and air conditioner noise. You know I'm in Vegas, you know it gets pretty hot. Got to keep my amps cool, got to keep myself cool. Anyway, speaking of cool stuff, not just me, let's talk about my top 5 favorite old school SQL subwoofers. Man, this brings back great memories. I got in the game of car audio 30 years ago, 1994. I've told the story. Please look for some old videos of mine. Told the story of how I got into it. My first system that I heard, my first system that I built was absolute trash. But then I also talk about my years of being a DB drag competitor, won a ton of trophies, a regional championship, all that good stuff. And all that stuff I did, I built myself. Not saying that like a brag, just saying I know what I'm doing. You know, I do this. I have a passion for this. Like, I absolutely love this stuff. I mean, I know what my channel says I still love car audio and car audio tech stuff. 30 years in the game, I love it just as much as I did when I first got in the game. But anyway, enough of me talking about my love for the game as a whole. Let's talk about my love for these top 5 subs. Top 5 being the least favorite, and I say that, you know, loosely as possible because I love these subs, but it was a toss-up between this number 5 and number 4, but number 5 would be the Image Dynamics ID Max 12. Man, I love that sub. I had a buddy of mine that used to compete. I'm not going to say his name because I don't know if he wants his name all over the internet, but he used to have a wall in his car that was removable where his car was his daily driver, and then he put his subs up. He used like T-nuts and insulation foam to make sure his box didn't have any air gaps. And he had the ID Max 15s, but I've also heard the 12s. That sub was perfectly musical, man. It was a great sounding sub, and when you wanted it to hit hard, it hit hard. And when it hit hard, it was still clean and musical. It was an awesome sub. And some of you know that I have Image Dynamics, or I had Image Dynamics 8s in my door, and I was using them as mid-bass, and they sounded great. They did the job that I needed them to do, but I was really excited just to have them because I've always wanted them from way back in the day when I used to compete. I never got them because I was with different teams, different semi-sponsorships, if you will, but Image Dynamics ID Max 12 is an awesome sub. Still today, it's an awesome sub. It might not be the hardest hitting sub for SQL purposes, but it's a great musical sub that'll give you that power, that punch whenever you need it to. My number 4 sub, and again, this is a toss-up between 5 and 4. I was interchanging them back and forth, and I decided to put this one as number 4 because I built a box for my boy. Actually, I did the 10s, even though we're talking about 12-inch subs now. I did 3 10-inch Rockford Fosgate Punch Power Series. The sub with the pulp cone and the big vented pole piece in the back of the magnet. That sub was ridiculous for back in the day, mid to late 90s. Man, that sub was everything. It pounded hard, and it was still clean and musical. I did a buddy's car, and I built his box with 3 10s, even though we're talking about 12s. I did it with 3 10s. He had a Volkswagen Golf GTI, the little hatchback, and I was running those subs off my Kicker ZR600 that I sold him. And this dude's windshield would bubble. It would flex so hard and it would bubble. And it was still musical. It wasn't just heavy, muddy bass that just pounded the car and made the car rattle apart. When he played music, it still sounded really good. Man, that was a sweet sub. I haven't used, not for myself, but for anybody else, I haven't used Rockford Fosgate subs in ages since I built his box almost 20 years ago, but I always loved them. Matter of fact, I believe the very first system that I heard had those subs, and those subs gave me a headache for the entire day. It was the first system that I ever heard, and it hit so hard. The dude was playing Bone Thugs for the Love of Money off of a tape deck, and he only had a Punch 400, I think, at the time, and it still pounded because those subs were really efficient, well designed. Fosgate outdid themselves. I haven't heard Fosgate subs really since, but I don't know if they can top that design from way back when. That sub was amazing. My number 3 sub, you know I gotta throw in some Serwin Vega, man. I'm not talking about the Strokers. The Strokers were more SPL subs than musical for me, even though I've seen some guys today in modern times using them. They had some old retro Strokers. They were using them for SQ competitions. Unbelievable. If I would have known, I would have kept my Strokers from back in the day. But of course, like an idiot, I sold mine. But anyway, talking about the Serwin Vega series, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I could be mistaken, but if I'm not mistaken, the Serwin Vega series was like the step below the Stroker, because not everybody wanted a big old Stroker, heavy Stroker, expensive Stroker in their car, but they wanted something more musical, so they came out with the Vega series. Man, I competed with the Vegas. I remember. Again, I'm not going to say his name, but a guy used to work for Serwin Vega. They came out to the competition with that sub, with 2 of those subs, and damn near broke a record. Them subs hit so hard. And they weren't even super big, super high RMS subs, but they had nice size magnet, highly efficient. If you remember Serwin Vega, those subs were always efficient. If I'm not mistaken, they were somewhere between, I don't want to go too far and say, but it was like between 91 and 94 or even 96 dB efficient. Those subs were ridiculous. And they had that Pope cone design similar to that Fosgate Punch Power sub. And that sub was just magical, man. I mean, at one point I had 3 15-inch Serwin Vegas in my Jeep Cherokee. No wall, just in the back in a big old cabinet, ported. I gave a dude a demo, and at the time of the demo, 2 of the subs were working. One had become disconnected because I didn't have the connector on tight enough. And I played a song for him, not even an SPL burp or nothing like that. I played a song for him, and dude jumped out my car like, hell no. He jumped out like, that's too much. I'm like, wait a minute, dude, 1 sub's not working. He's like, nah, that was just 2, and you got a 3rd? Ain't no way. And he just ran away from my car. But those Vegas, man, I mean, yeah, I competed with them, but also after competitions, we would go to cruise nights, little show and shine, and I would still bass up and down the parking lot because they were still musical enough to do both. Love those Serwin Vegas, man. I'm mad that I didn't keep mine from back in the day. I know I have a Stereo Integrity SQL12 back there now, but if I had my Vega, I'd probably still rock that today. My number 2 sub, my number 2 favorite old school SQL sub. When I got out of competition and I just started building a SQL system for myself, not for competition, similar to my system now, I built a SQL system. I built an SQL system just for myself, and I was using Diamond Audio. I know you guys know I'm all Morel, but before Morel, I was all Diamond Audio Hex. It was the best system I had built prior to this one. I had Diamond Audio 3-way up front. I was running PPI amplifiers and concept amps later on, but PPI amplifiers, and I had Crossfire BMF 12s. Oh, man. Those things hit so hard. So hard. When I did my first system, I believe I had a PPI amp, and I had a 15-inch BMF in a false floor in my car, and it was cool, it was clean and all that. But like today, I like that SQL. Every now and then I still like to turn it up and let the bass do what it's supposed to do. So I went with 2 12-inch Crossfire BMFs, the old school. I think it was the first or second generation of them, and I had concept amps, and it was like 1100 watts per sub, and I had a big old ported box, and it was devastatingly loud, but it could still play good music. I would still listen to my R&B, jazz, whatever on them, and they still played all the notes like they needed to do. They were just quality subs, but they hit a whole lot harder than I expected them to. And when I would go to the cruise night show and shines, people was like, oh, what happened to your wall of Strokers? I'm like, man, I downsized. I want something different. What do you have now? Crossfire BMFs. Okay, can I hear it? People were sitting there holding their ears, saying their head hurt. Them things pounded. And, I built the box, and only reason I'm mentioning that I built the box is because I know some people frown at the fact that I have prefab boxes, but like I said before, prefab boxes are not like they were back in the day. They're actually quality boxes like I would have built myself if I would have built this box myself. So, I have no issues with prefab. But anyway, the Crossfire BMF 12 was ridiculous. I want to say it was maybe 800 watts RMS, maybe. So I was putting way more power than they could handle, and I could only play them hard for so long before you start to smell that voice coil cook through the port. But man, they were devastatingly loud and clean. They were well built, some of the best built subs SQL subs for that time, some of the best SQL built subs by Crossfire. And my number one, I almost feel bad saying that this is my number one, because when I competed DB Drag back in the day, it was almost like a competition between Serwin Vega and JL Audio. Man, the JL Audio W6, the old school, maybe the first generation, at least it was for me that I know about, the JL W6, when they used to run them in sets of threes to get down to that, 2.66 ohms. I believe that's how it was wired. The JLW6 off those PPI Art Series amps, it was almost like every car had three 12-inch W6s and a PPI Art Series amp, and it pounded like nobody's business, but it was also clean. I mean, I'm talking clean. It would play those low notes where it was almost like it was growling, like it would play real low, distortion free. This, oh man, ear clogging bass where you're like, God dog, these JLW6s are ridiculous. They weren't necessarily for DB Drag. Some people try to compete with them. They were loud, but the Serwin Vega teams, we would usually smoke them because those Serwin Vega subs were built for competition, especially the strokers. But I digress. The PPI Art Series amps with the three 12-inch W6s. God dog, those JLW6s. I mean, I've said it before, JL makes some of the best subs I've ever heard. Still to this day, I think they're severely overpriced, but they're some of the best subs that I've ever heard still to this day. I mean, I love my SQL12, and I love like the Dyer Audio Brahma 12. I love that sub, the ID Max, even still to this day. There's a lot of great subs that can equally match or even outperform the JLW6s, JLW7s, but it's still something magical about those JL series subs, man. The W6, I haven't even heard the current model W6 yet. I'm still thinking about how good the old school W6s sounded, and from what I've read, people still love the current W6, but those old school W6s, God dog, man. I mean, I would literally listen to people's cars with my mouth open like, I can't believe how good these subs sound. They were just, man, they were spot on, man. They hit those low notes, distortion free. They play that high bass, that fast, higher notes, 50, 60 hertz like it was nothing. Never an issue. And matter of fact, these guys were running them sealed. I don't know if I've heard the W6 ported. I don't know if it was designed to be ported, but it would usually be three in a sealed box off of a PPI Art Series amp. And man, devastatingly loud, super clean, supreme musicality. It was just a great, perfectly built sub, man. I think that's probably the sub that put JL on the map even before they dropped the W7. It was that W6. It was just, it's just a legendary subwoofer. Still one of my favorites to this day, almost 30 years later, since I've heard them, and you know, they're worth it. Not to me. I'm not gonna pay that kind of money for it. There's no way I'm gonna pay that much money for a single sub. Even though I paid that much money for my front stage, it's different. It's different. Just for one sub, that much money? Nah, I can't see myself doing it. But anyway, those are my top 5 old school SQL type subs. If I missed anything, or if you guys have something that you think are better than my top 5, please let me know in the comments. Let me know what you think. Or if you like my top 5 series, let me know what you think. Would you have them in the same order? Would you put your W6 as number 1? Would you put the ID Max as number 5? Would you change the order that I did, or would you rock with me? You know, let me know, man. And until next time, stay tuned.